It always sounds so much more impressive than it actually is. So I want to wish everyone a Merry New Year. I have a bit of a crusade to bring the word merry more into our lives rather than just once a year. So I'd like to enlist you all in that. So start wishing people a Merry birthday, Merry 4th of July, have a merry vacation. If you know any store clerks, instead of have a nice day, have a merry day. I think it would just be so much better. Merry to me is just a little bit more full than just happy, a little bit more fun. You know? And my motto is if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. So be merry. Be a little bit more merry. The theme for this month is love as the light reborn within us. As I was reviewing the previous messages, I noticed a kind of other thing that kept being repeated. Very odd, but I kept seeing it over and over, hearing it over and over. Like when Dorian Mason was here, he talked about when he was a teenager, he had suicidal ideations, he said, and that those had recurred when he was on his meditation retreat. He was wondering about that. When Lillian was speaking here, she talked about how she was in bad times in Costa Rica, and one time when she was walking along the beach, she just thought about, well, what if I just went into the ocean and just kept on going? And even last week at the Christmas Eve, because I was already attuned to that, at the Christmas Eve celebration, when Reverend Terry was here and she told that parable about the guy who was in the prison cell, and his idea was to commit, as she put it, suicide by guard. And I thought, well, that's an odd kind of theme, but, I'll go with the flow if that's what it is. So I'm going to tell you a few stories. So first there's Richard. So in the 1920s, Richard's company that he had founded failed, went under. And so he didn't have a job as the president of that company. And he thought of himself as a failure. He was unemployed, he had a new baby daughter, no savings, no steady income. The family was living beyond its means and falling farther and farther into debt. And that's all Richard could foresee for the future. Just more and more of the same. As sometimes happens, he took to drink. He walked around the streets of Chicago trying to find a way out. The only thing he could think of was to die so his family could get the life insurance benefits. As he walked along the shore of Lake Michigan, he decided to swim out until he was too exhausted to be able to swim back. And there's Brendan. Brendan was a college freshman. He had followed his high school sweetheart to college. They enrolled in the same classes, and he had planned out his entire future. They would go to college together, they would get married, they would buy a house, they'd have kids, and they'd live happily ever after. Somewhere in the freshman year, his girlfriend discovered that there were other boys, and she cheated on him. And his entire future was gone. And he fell into a deep depression. He rarely left his dorm room, wouldn't go to classes, didn't shower, and started planning how to commit suicide, working out the details. And there's Jo. She thought of herself as a failure. When her marriage broke up, she saw that as a failure. She had no job, a young daughter, went on welfare, and couldn't see any better prospects for the future. She went into a severe depression and thought about suicide. As it turns out, all three of these people did, in fact, end their lives by starting new ones. Richard Fuller, had a mystical experience when he was on the shore of Lake Michigan. He felt as though he were suspended several feet above the ground, enclosed in a white sphere of light. A voice spoke to him saying, "You do not have the right to eliminate yourself. You do not belong to you. You belong to universe." You may know Richard Fuller, I'm sure you do know Richard Fuller better by his middle name, Buckminster, and have some idea of what followed after that cold autumn Chicago evening. Now, Brendan saw that there was a summer job in Latin America. He decided to take that just to get away from everything. And when he was riding along with his friend, he got into a near-fatal car accident. I mean, really bad, near fatal. His doors wouldn't open, had to get out through the windshield, and I won't go on. But when he had that unplanned encounter with mortality, his outlook on life changed. I don't know if you know Brendan Burchard, but he's now the author of several best-selling books on personal development. His YouTube channels and podcasts on personal development are among the most watched, maybe the most watched. He gives seminars that are packed, online classes, and by all accounts, he's very happily married to some other lady, not the high school girlfriend. Now, Jo didn't have any mystical vision. She didn't have any life-altering event happen to her. She just realized that these suicidal thoughts were not good, and so she sought help, and she got help. And after 9 months of cognitive behavioral therapy, she overcame her depression. Now, I tried to see if Jo Rowling had a middle name. She doesn't, so that K is just something that came up, but I think you know the salient points of the rest of J.K. Rowling's career as well. I came across, when I was working on this, a quote by Joseph Campbell. He said, "We must be willing to get rid of the life we've planned, or at least the one we foresee, so as to have the life that is waiting for us." Now, we don't have to be suicidal to have things that we want to change, to have problems that we want to solve. When Lillian was here, she told us that the human brain is wired to solve problems. That doesn't mean it's wired to create problems. You all know about the thing about the glass being either half full or half empty, depending on if you're an optimist or a pessimist, and which is which, I've always thought, depends on what's in the glass. But that's... But then there's the neurotic who sees the glass, is like, oh, it's too close to the edge of the table, it's going to fall off, it's going to smash into a million pieces, there's going to be glass all over every place, we're not going to be able to pick them all up, we're going to get glass in there. That's neurotic. That's not the optimist or the solution, of course, is move the glass away from the edge of the table, and then you can be optimistic about what's in the glass. So the question is, what are you using your head for? Are you using your head for despair, or are you using your head for delight? It's up to you. When Lillian was here again, she quoted somebody. I did not note the name of the person, but she said, "Teach yourself to become a totally rounded orb in its own rotundity, joying." And I love that word, joying. Joy is it's different from enjoying, right? You enjoy a nice meal, you enjoy a day at the beach, or a night at the opera, either the actual opera or the Marx Brothers movie, doesn't matter, you're enjoying it. But when you're joying, you're doing joy, you're being joy. And as for totally rounded orb in its rotundity, I think after the holidays we're all a little bit closer to that as well. Joying. When Dorian was here, he told us how he had asked a number of 6th graders to tell him to write down their dreams and their goals. And when reviewing that, I noticed that maybe 30-40% of those were things they wanted to do. But the majority of things that they wanted were things they wanted to be or to become. And I was thinking, this is the time when a lot of people make New Year's resolutions. And I wonder how many of those resolutions are about being something, becoming something, joying, rather than doing. Or not doing is a lot of the resolutions as well. Now, when people consider their New Year and New Year's resolutions, a lot of them don't fall into a severe depression, but get kind of down. And It never makes sense. It's just another day. You know, it's just another day where, you know, there's nothing really changes. I mean, the biggest change is that you have to remember to write 18 instead of 17 on your checks or when you write down the date. Nothing really changes unless you make it change. Unless you make it change, and you can do that any day. You don't have to do it on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. It's just another day. It's just a date on the calendar. It's a date on the calendar. Now, what's on your calendar? When, again, Brendan Burchard says, when you think of your goals and your dreams, if it's not on your calendar, it's not real. If you don't have dates for them, it's not real. I've often said a plan is an intention with a schedule. Is it on your calendar? And not just your paper calendars or the ones on your devices. We all have calendars in our heads. We all have a way of sorting out, when we think of something in the past or in the future, we have a way of knowing that it's a thought about the past or a thought about the future. And the metaphors that we use tell us that. You know, it's, oh, that's back in the past. Or you have your future ahead of you. Right? The future's in front. And, or looking back on my past. Those are not just metaphors. Those are often a common way to sort out time, to sort out the past and the future. So a lot of people will have the past behind them and the future ahead of them. It's simply the actual way that that calendar, those dates, are arranged in our heads. There's another way as well that is very common for people to arrange the past and the future, and that's from left to right. I don't know if any of you have ever taken, it's left to, you're left and right, right? Did I get it right? Left to right? That's my left to right. I'm talking about your left to right. No? Yes? Did I get? Okay, I don't want to get confused, and I want to confuse you. Your left to your right. I spent a lot of time working on that. I'd hate to think I got it wrong. From left to right. I don't know if any of you have ever taken a cognitive test where they give you maybe a half a dozen pictures that are, when laid out in a sequence, they have a little story. And the idea is to see if you understand, you know, what has to come before what. And when people do that, at least in the Western world, it's always left to right. Maybe it's because of the way we read. But that's another way that we lay out time. The past is off to the left, the future to the right. Now, what I'd like to do is try a little something with us. And that is this. In addition to just saying left and right, there's also near and far. Right? Something, oh, that's you know, next week is pretty close. And 10 years from now, well, that's in the far future. Right? That's the way we talk again. And that's the way we lay it out. The closer in time, the closer in space. That's simply the way that we arrange these things. And I'd like to try a couple of things with you. I'm moving my hands. So however you normally, and you may not even be conscious of it, however you normally arrange time in your head, arrange that calendar, what I'd like you to do is arrange it from left to right so that the past goes off to your left and the future goes off to your right. I'd like to actually visualize that, either consciously or unconsciously, and with your eyes open. Because when you think about the past and the future, when you have these calendars in your head, your eyes are open when you're thinking about it. So have your eyes open. Past that way, future that way. Now what I'd like you to do is take that timeline, that unbroken chain, past and future that Holmes talked about, and put it at about desk level. So it's right around where you'd have a desk. Very long desk, but a desk. And you do that so that you can lay it all out, so that you can see it all, so that you can plan. So if you have any goals for the coming year or the coming future, whatever it is, where on that future timeline is it? Roughly, the time frame. It doesn't have to be a specific date, but the time frame. Where along the future is it? Put it there. Put it there. And then in order for that goal to be accomplished, well, certain things have to happen in between then and now. If you're, as RJ did, going for a PhD, well, there's a few things you have to do. You have to apply to colleges. You have to work out the course of study. You have to do the studying. You have to do the writing, and so on until the PhD is out there in a particular time frame. But there's other things in between. This way of arranging your time so that it's all like on a desk is a way to do planning. Yes, you can use the physical calendars as well once you've sort of got that set up. And you look into your past as well. What are the resources that I have acquired from my past that I can apply to this future goal? Resources as skills you've learned, your network of people and friends that can help you out. There's all kinds of things from the past that you bring to the present and can apply to the future. So I'd like you to really consider this as a new tool in your toolbox to use when you want to plan something, when you're considering your goals and your dreams. Where on my timeline are they? And what comes in between, and what can I apply to them? And I want to do a little something else now. So that's one tool in the toolbox. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this notion of a timeline. In a workshop, the first thing we do is we actually elicit how people, what their default timeline is. And as I say, the general trend is back to front or left to right. But people have their own variations on it, and some of them are really interesting. But this isn't a workshop, so we're not going to do that. What we are going to do is something else. And what we're going to do is this. You have your timeline laid out at roughly desk level. I want you to raise it up to about heart level. And if it's a desk, it's pretty close. Move it a little further, maybe arm's length away. So it's heart level and arm's length away. Now I want you to start bending it a little bit. So the pass that's going off to your left curves around toward the back a little. So it's kind of like it's both to your left and it's kind of in back. Not, you can still like turn your head and look to see it, but it's kind of in back. And then the future part, to your right, but also forward, and also up. Have it start moving up. And as you do that, make it brighter. Make that brighter. Look at your goals there. And make the line wider, because you got to have more stuff in the future. So make it wider, too, not this narrow little thing. A very wide future timeline, brighter and brighter. And as you do that, sprinkle some fun in there, not just your goals and your dreams. Sprinkle some fun, and that will make it glow brighter. And make sure there's a lot of merry in there as well. And that makes it even brighter. And then joying, polish it up with joy so that it shines and shines and shines. And then just spread love all over it so that it's ablaze with light. Have that, really picture that. Your future is so bright, as the song says, you've got to wear shades. And so it is.